The death of Ayakanu Marithamutu. The Curry murder was a high-profile murder case in 1984 that supposedly involved the perpetrators covering up the killing by chopping the victim Ayakanu Marimutu's body into pieces and cooking them in curry. Ayakanu Marithamuth was born in 1950 in Singapore. He worked as a caretaker in charge of the Public Utilities Board-run Holiday Chalets, situated alongside Biggin Hill Road, Changi, Singapore. Since around 1980, Maritha Muthu, his wife, and their three children had been residing at a small house behind Orchard Road Presbyterian Church. In March 1987, 6 suspects, including Marimuthu's wife, Nagaratha Valley Ramaya, and her relatives were charged with murder, but given a discharge not amounting to an acquittal, as no remains or evidence of the killing were ever found. On 9th January 1987, an informer notified Detective G. Alagamalai that in 1984, a man by the name of Ayakano Marimuthu had been murdered and his body chopped up into pieces and cooked in curry. Alagamalai was initially disgusted and skeptical, but brought up the story to his superiors in the Criminal Investigation Department, CID. The senior officers in the CID were equally skeptical of the informer's story, but instructed Alagamalai to conduct inquiries into the case. Alagamalai soon found a missing persons report on Marimuthu, lodged by his wife, Nagaratha Valley Ramaya, on 18 December 1984 at the Ju Chiat police station. In the report, Ramaya stated that her husband had not returned from a trip to Genting Highlands in Malaysia, having left Singapore on the 12th of December. Police found no cause for suspicion of foul play and recorded Marimuthu as a missing person. Months later, Ramaya was employed as a caretaker at the Fuchao Methodist Church on Racecourse Road. With his informant's story given credibility by Marimuthu's missing persons report, Alagamalai pressed on with his investigation. Over the course of a 2-month investigation, he spoke to about 30 people and gathered background information on a number of suspects, one of whom was a mutton butcher. On 23 March 1987, the CID's Special Investigations Section conducted an operation to bring in the suspects. From 2 a.m. that day, 5 police teams raided different locations simultaneously, including a flat in Jurong East, a caretaker's quarters on Netheravon Road, and the Orchard Road Presbyterian Church. By 9 a.m., a total of 8 suspects were rounded up. They were Marimuthu's widow Ramaya, his mother-in-law Kamachi Krishnasamy, Ramaya's 3 brothers Rathakrishnana Ramaya, Shanmugam Chandra, and Balakrishna Ramaya, and their wives. Balakrishna Ramaya was a butcher at a mutton stall at Commonwealth Avenue Market, while his brothers Ramaya and Chandra were caretakers at the Ministry of Finance's Holiday Chalets on Netheravon Road and the Orchard Road Presbyterian Church, respectively. Krishnasamy was a housewife, while Mary Manui, Ramaya's sister-in-law, was a factory worker. The suspects initially denied any knowledge of Marimuthu's murder until 25 March 1987, when investigators established from one of them the details of the case. Details of the gruesome murder soon emerged. According to the suspect's revelation, Marimuthu was brought to the caretaker's quarters of the Presbyterian Church by the 3 brothers on the afternoon of December 12, 1984. On that night, it was said that Marimuthu was bludgeoned with an iron rod in the kitchen of the quarters, and his body chopped up and cooked with chili powder, spices, and rice in a large aluminum pot of the type often used in Indian restaurants to cook nasi biryani, a popular rice dish served with either chicken, mutton, or fish. The remains, including cracked pieces of skull and bones, were placed into black plastic bags and disposed of in several roadside rubbish bins. Then Director of the CID, Assistant Commissioner Jagjit Singh, described the case as one of the most unusual and bizarre murder cases handled and solved by the police. Unusual because the remains of the body have never been found, and the deceased had not even been reported to have been murdered. Bizarre because of the manner in which the body was disposed of. A newspaper report of the murder in March 1987 described the victim Marimuthu as often being drunk and violent, and physically abusive towards his wife Ramaya. A spokesman for the Orchard Road Presbyterian Church also said the duo were a hard-working couple and that Marimuthu possessed a hot temper but would apologize after calming down. On 27 March 1987, Ramaya and her 3 brothers Balakrishna, Ramaya and Chandra, were charged with the murder of Maramuthu, while her mother Krishnasamy and sister-in-law Manwe were charged the following day with abetting the murder. The six were brought to court on the 6th of June, 1987. During a 12-minute hearing, the prosecution said there was insufficient evidence to proceed against them, as neither the remains of the victim's body, the murder weapon, nor the cooking pot were found. District Judge Zainal Abidin gave the six a discharge not amounting to an acquittal, which meant that they could be charged again for the same offense. Deputy Public Prosecutor Ang Sin Tek added that police investigations would continue with the intention of future charges. After the hearing, the six were taken back into custody by the CID. Ramaya, Krishnasamy, and Manui were not rearrested, but the three brothers were detained at Changi Prison from 22nd June 1987 under the Criminal Law, Temporary Provisions Act. They were released unconditionally on 21st June 1991. Juhani Atamanpoika's series of murders. Juhani Atamanpoika was born on July 31, 1826, in Vesivema, in the south of Finland. The boy's childhood was difficult because his father committed suicide, and his peers did not get along well with Juhan. The mother's new partner also did not make the situation any better. The boy was often beaten by his stepfather. When the young man turned 15, he left home and started working as an itinerant servant and started committing various petty crimes, and at the same time, major sins were committed by the boy. It was not until the autumn of 1849 that the thefts of 23-year-old Juhan turned into real villains. In October 1849, he was taken from Hämeenlinna prison to the Hauho Autumn Court on charges of horse theft when he escaped from his escorts in Hauho and began a series of homicides. In Lami, he was hired to kill the master and mistress of the Heliseva Croft by a man named Kustaa Kratula. He went to the croft in the evening, pretended that his horse had fled, and asked if he could stay overnight. At dinner, he took a sickle from the wall and murdered his hosts, finishing the job with a rock. From here, he continued his journey to his home in Chunami, Heinola Parish, where he fell out with his stepfather, Alexander Bohm, and killed him, his own mother, and the couple's children who had fled to the forest. Shortly afterward, he killed a man to get his certificate to get a job at a canal site. Atamanpoika traveled to the Saimaa Canal, killing more people on the way, including a beggar who he beat to death with a stave and a drunk foreman whose cart happened to nick his on the road. He did not stay at the canal work site, but killed a sailor in order to get his papers. At the beginning of November, Atamanpoika returned to Lami, from which he left with his friend Antti Suikko to go to the Tyri Croft in the village of Hatomala. The men vandalized the house, maimed the tenants, and stole their money. The elderly mistress of the house died later from her injuries, but the others, including 2 3- to 4-year-old children he had beaten, managed to survive the attack. Shortly after the incident, on November 20th, Atamanpoika was apprehended due to the keen observation of a local landowner. This landowner, recognizing the fugitive, devised a clever ruse by pretending to offer Atamanpoika a cheap horse for sale. Instead of leading him to a stable, the landowner directed him to the local constable's office in Palsa, situated near the border of Lami and Padashoki. Upon realizing he was being betrayed, Atamanpoika attempted to attack the constable in a desperate bid for escape. However, the constable and his deputies quickly intervened, managing to restrain him and ultimately arrest him, bringing an end to his flight from justice. At the end of the trial, the Viborg Court of Appeal sentenced him to death. The sentence was upheld in the Senate's Department of Justice, but the emperor commuted it to 40 lashes and a live entombment sentence. Juhani was transferred to Suomenlinna in January 1853, shackled and walled into a cell so small he could not move more than a few inches. Passers-by would poke at the human monster through the lattice. He was kept there for a year and a half until he died in 1854. Juhani Atamanpoika was also known by the nickname Kerpekari, which is coined from the Swedish word skarprättare, meaning executioner. He was famous in his own time, but his actions were eventually forgotten, and he did not end up with the same level of fame as, for example, Matti Hapia. The disappearance of Kirsa Jensen. Kirsa Jensen was born 15th December 1968, a 14-year-old girl who lived in Napier, New Zealand. 3 p.m. on that ill-fated Thursday afternoon, Kirsa Jensen went to collect her horse, Commodore, from the paddock next to her home in Riverbend Road. She proceeded to ride him via Te Awa Avenue and Miani Road to Awatoto Beach in Napier. It is alleged that she would have arrived at the beach at 3:30 p.m. and was subsequently seen at 4 p.m. by a passerby. The last sighting by a witness was of Kirsa with blood on her face and Commodore at the gun emplacement near the mouth of the Tutakuri River. She was also seen talking to a man with a white ute. At 5:30 p.m., her mother started to worry and friends and family started to look for her. The police were advised of her disappearance at 6:45 p.m. and started a preliminary search. They found her horse, Commodore, wandering aimlessly near the Tutakuri River Bridge. The search continued till around 11:30 p.m. when it was called off for the night, to be started again at first light. On Friday, September 2nd, the search effort resumed with the assistance of local volunteers. Detective Inspector Ian Holyoke led the investigation with his team of detectives. After speaking with a witness, they now suspect that foul play may be involved. The search continues, but there are still no signs of Kirsa. On Saturday, September 3rd, police divers were deployed to search the river and surrounding waterways, utilizing a heat detector designed to locate bodies. The police also called for the driver of a white ute, who was seen conversing with Kirsa, to come forward for questioning. Additionally, fingerprint and forensic specialists were brought in to analyze blood and hair samples found at the gun emplacement. Over the next 48 hours, the search continued without any success. On Tuesday, September 6th, the search is extended and Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Police, Mel Churches, joins the Kirsa Jensen Task Force. A $5,000 reward is offered by the Napier Daily Telegraph for any information that leads to Kirsa being found. The next day, a video is made retracing Kirsa's movements and is circulated to shops in Napier and Hastings along with a police caravan in the center of town, for easy access for people who may have seen or heard something to do with the case. On Thursday, September 8th, the video of Kirsa's movements on the day of her disappearance is shown on Eyewitness News nationwide. On Friday, the police ask for the public's help in finding the man in the white ute with wooden sides by phoning in registration numbers. It is of obvious police concern that he has not come forward voluntarily by now. The search continues. The police release through the press witness evidence as to the last sightings of Kirsa Jensen. One of the most important was from a passerby who noticed a girl by the gun emplacement being held at arm's length by a man, described as European, 1.8 meters tall, and seemed 45 to 50 years in age. He also saw a white-ton truck with flat deck and brown sides parked close by. Another witness stopped and talked to Kirsa, who he noticed had blood on her face, which she told him had happened when she fell from her horse. Someone had gone to inform her parents and she expected them to arrive shortly. He left thinking all was under control. The other important information was from a witness that said around 4:30 p.m. he had driven past a white-ton truck coming off the bridge. The driver was described as a European male with brown hair and approximately 20 to 30 years old. He had his arm around the girl passenger's shoulders and was driving using one hand. Commodore was seen by several witnesses after this, around 4:45 p.m. tied to the gun emplacement. The police now theorize that Kirsa had encountered foul play at the hands of an unknown individual. They speculated that she may have fallen from her horse and that the person seen with her, who initially appeared to be trying to help by contacting her parents, had actually abducted her, likely using force to render her unconscious. There was only one suspect who held the police's attention for a long time. His name was John Russell, and he already had a conviction for rape. He identified himself as the man who was seen with Kirsa Jensen at the gun emplacement on that horrific afternoon. The police tested over 100 samples of fibers taken from his home and went over his truck, but no evidence was found. John Russell proclaimed his innocence and believed he was being persecuted because he had come forward to help the investigation, not to become a suspect. However, on several occasions, Russell did admit to killing Kirsa Jensen, but always recanted, and the police never had enough evidence to take the case to court. He also visited Kirsa's parents and spoke to Dan Jensen, Kirsa's father, telling him that he was not involved in his daughter's disappearance. Later again, he returned to their residence and spoke to Kursa's mother, Robin Jensen, still denying his involvement with Kursa's disappearance. Shortly after this, Russell was committed to Lake Alice Psychiatric Facility for help with a mental condition. 4 weeks after his release, John Russell committed suicide by hanging himself in a Hastings guest house. He unfortunately left no note giving his reasons for ending his life.